Shalom. Welcome to another episode of Inspiration from Zion. I'm Jonathan Feldstein, and I have the privilege of being your host, coming to you from the Judean Mountains here in Israel. I like to refer to it as the original Bible Belt. Inspiration from Zion is a program of the Genesis 123 Foundation, whose mission is to build bridges between Jews and Christians with Israel in ways that are new, unique, and meaningful. I pray that you will find this all of those. Through this program, we're excited to connect you to people and stories in and relating to Israel to give you a window to look through, experiencing aspects of life here that you might not otherwise know about. We want this to be interactive, so please be in touch with us at inspirationfromzion@gmail.com and send along any questions and any comments about any topic anytime. Or you can reach us at genesis123.co or follow and like Inspiration from Zion on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The end of June, I just happened to be in Washington, D.C., a wonderful opportunity to recognize divine providence in some of the most mundane, but truly some of the most significant and consequential things. And my friend, Pastor Dumisani Washington, was hosting a press conference about a really important new project that he's launching. And we're going to talk about that today. But there was no way I was going to be in Washington, D.C. and not be able to at least go see him and give him a hug, although it's awkward because he's so much taller than I, and my neck goes up like that. And sometimes if my kippah is not on my head properly, that'll fall off. These are very big conflicts having tall friends. And I went to, it was actually a very cool place, never been to the National Press Club before, and entered a room with I don't know, a couple of dozen people there and got to see Dumisani with Dr. Michael, wow,
Stevens.
Stevens. Sorry, wow, that was a senior moment. It's still jet lag from June. Unfortunately, that's the problem. And they were talking about a program that just kind of blew me away. Of course, I wanted to be there. It didn't matter what the program was. I was going to see my friend and I would be there to lend my support in any way possible. But immediately when it ended, I said, okay, we got to promote this. And this is something that's very, very, very important. And we're going to talk about that and why. But first, if you don't know Dumisani Washington, let me introduce. He's the founder and CEO of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. The acronym is IBSI. We're going to talk about a few acronyms today. He's also the former diversity outreach coordinator for Christians United for Israel, CUFI, having served nearly 7 years in that capacity. Dumisani is a pastor, a professional musician, and author whose latest book is in the second edition called Zionism and the Black Church: Why Standing with Israel Will Be a Defining Issue for Christians of Color in the 21st Century. While on staff with CUFI, Dumisani organized multi-ethnic Christian support for Israel from across the United States and helped launch CUFI Africa to engage the many Israel Christian supporters and honorary CUFI members from South Africa, Zimbabwe, Togo, Ghana, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Kenya, Morocco, and even more. Dumisani is also the creator of CUFI's Mizrahi Project, a short film project that tells the story of over 850,000 Jewish refugees from North Africa and the Middle East as part of his effort to initiate the Mizrahi Project. He was featured in the 2016 PragerU video, Why Are There Still Palestinian Refugees?, which has received millions of views worldwide. Dumisani is the founder and director of the Hebrew Project Artists, a music group that performs gospel music with Hebrew and English lyrics in an artistic stand with Israel and the Jewish people. Its latest release is entitled "O Jerusalem." Dumisani and his wife Valerie have been married, well, probably more than 36 years now. I don't know how old this bio is. They have 6 children, 3 grandchildren, and they live outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. Dumisani, I only got home a little over a week ago. As I mentioned, I'm still dealing with tremendous jet lag, but it was absolutely a priority of mine that we have this conversation just as soon as possible because I was so engaged back at the end of June in your presentation, and now we get the opportunity to present it to a much wider group of people. And I hope we'll have, I hope this conversation will be as consequential as your program Unfinished Business deserves. Thank you again for joining Inspiration from Zion.
Jonathan, my friend, thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Just on that last note, you're right. We've been married 38 years and four grandchildren, just as an update. So that is an older bio, but just want to give that shout out to my
But it,
lovely
but it
bride.
is a
But
greater just to keep adding years and grandchildren.
yes, yes,
That's a blessing.
may we all be so fortunate. Yes or no, we're very, very grateful. But again, I appreciate it. It was just God's timing, right? It was one of those moments that, like you said, you just happened to be in Washington D.C. at that moment. I know you do a lot of traveling, a lot of work, sometimes in the States and then back in Israel and everything. And so you just happened to be there at that time. I didn't know that you were there at that time until you walked in and said, "Hey, Jonathan." And so it was great to see you. Yes, it was. I remember that too in the question that we took Q&A, a quick Q&A, and you were the first one. And the first question you asked was why? Why are you doing it? You know, and obviously not in a cynical way. Johnson, okay, what is the motive behind it? What's happening? What the timing? Why now? I'm sorry, the question was why now? Why now? And I thought it was a very, very powerful question. And it really does speak to even why it exists. So the council, that press conference was simultaneously announcing the council, which is called the Black Christian Leadership Council on Israel Relations. You mentioned my colleague, Dr. Michael Stevens,
Yes,
longtime
I
Christian Bible
apologize
practice.
for flanking on his name for
Yes,
a
sir.
little of
I've
YouTube.
been doing that myself. I told people I have six children, and sometimes I'm going, you're yeah, yeah. So I love all my kids. I love all my grandkids. So I said, but those senior moments, they do come. But Dr. Michael Stevens and I are kind of the co-founders of this venture, which includes Pastor Brandy Gibson, Pastor Reginald Gibson, and Pastor Roger Cheeks. Pastor Roger Cheeks of International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. He's one of their national directors. Of course, my wife, Valerie, who's not only the COO of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, but is also one of the founding members of the council. So we call it the council for short, not because we think we're all cool and trendy, but because it's easier to say that than the long, very long name of,
Then BCLCIR,
right?
which
Exactly.
just doesn't roll off your tongue no matter what you
Does
do.
not, it doesn't work at all. It's funny. My wife looked at it. She said, "Well, it kind of says be clear, right? If you're going to look at it and kind of do it a phonetic type of thing, but yeah, that's still too difficult." So that is the website, ladies and gentlemen, bclcir.org. And so what happened? So the unfinished business Holy Land tour. We were announcing both the council, the formation of the council, and again coming together. Each of us as senior Black Americans in the Zionist, in Christian Israel, Africa, or Black Jewish space, right? In the space of forging that unity, doing the advocacy, teaching, training, education, all of those things, leading trips to Israel, all those spaces, particularly in what is the very unique relationship between the Black and Jewish communities, both here in the States, and then when you're talking about, as you've heard me say, Jonathan, before, the oldest international relationship Israel has is when the Queen of Sheba visited Solomon 3,000 years ago in Jerusalem. So you're talking about a connection that goes back millennia or goes back centuries here in the States. So for us, I wrote about unfinished business is actually a term that Dr. Stevens came up with, and it refers to Dr. King, Martin Luther King, his planned Holy Land pilgrimage, a mass pilgrimage of some 5,000 Black Americans to Israel in November of 1967. So if all those are listening, said that never happened. No, it never did happen. He was planning it all throughout. It was probably a good 2 years of planning that part. I'm not sure, but we have letters between Dr. King and former Israeli Prime Minister David Ben Gurion and the current Prime Minister at that time, who was, I believe, Lenny Eshkol, if I'm saying his name
Levi
correctly.
Eshkol, yeah. Mhm.
Levi Eshkol, thank you, sir. And so we have their letters. We have the letters there in Ben Gurion's archives. They're in the King letters. This years ago on the King Institute, you could actually view PDF files and everything. In one of the letters we found years ago, the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel in our research, we found years ago a letter from Dr. King to Ben Gurion and from Ben Gurion to Dr. King, congratulating each other on this tour. And Ben Gurion was so excited. Ben Gurion even says, "You're going to revive the old tradition of making pilgrimage to the Holy Lands." Now, he didn't say the old Black tradition. In other words, what Ben Gurion was saying, if you
Wow.
understand it, there were no mass pilgrimages. We associate that now with Christians coming to Israel from all over the world and the
Wow,
United
that is
States.
important.
Yes, 100%. Jonathan, not to make it racial, but I want to make this people
Uh-huh.
clear, be very clear on this. Generally, Jonathan, you and I associate mass pilgrimage often with white evangelical Christians who visit from the United States. They come from all over the world, right? I'm not saying in a pejorative way. I'm just saying that's usually the case. You have people of all ethnicities from the United States go, absolutely. But you talk about mass pilgrimage of hundreds or thousands of people. That's not usually something you associate with the Black American Christian community. Well, according to Dr. King and Ben Gurion, Dr. King was getting ready to start off something that did not exist at all. You didn't have thousands of Christians coming from the United States of any ethnicity,
You
including
didn't
Black
even have
Americans.
thousands of Jews then. Remember, that was Israel was 18 years old. The
Yep,
people who were coming were new immigrants by the
100%.
tens of thousands and 50 and hundreds of thousands. But
Yep,
this is so super consequential because what Ben Gurion was saying is you're
right.
restarting a biblical program.
Right, 100%. He was talking about pilgrimage, and of course, and it's funny, we were just and I was talking about the Bible over the weekend. We do our little Shabbat thing with our kids and our family and everything and stuff. And what we were talking about was that, this last week's Torah portion, we can kind of divert a little bit and everything, have a little Torah discussion, included Deuteronomy 16, in which God gave instructions for what we know now are the pilgrimage feasts, right? Passover,
Right.
Shavuot, and Sukkot come 3 times a year to the place that God will choose. Of course, we know that place is Jerusalem, right? That's where pilgrimage, for the Jonathan knows this already, but for our non-Jewish friends who are maybe watching this, the pilgrimage idea comes from within the Jewish community. God tells the Jews, wherever you are in the land, or in the world, come back. This is why we as Christians, when you read about the day of Pentecost and Jews from all over the world, that was something that Jewish people would recognize as something that was old. For Christians like new, oh my God, they all came for some convention. No, they were there for Shavuot. And so this happens within Israel. And then as the Christian era comes, pilgrimage to the Holy Land becomes something like a metaphor for, as a pilgrim journeying to your spiritual home, a Christian going to their spiritual home, which is where Christianity began. So the whole pilgrimage idea comes from Israel. The whole thing, even Pentecost, the first Pentecostals were Jews, as Dr. Hagee would say all the time. So Dr. King was about to start something that was not happening.
For
Who
2000
knows
years.
how history would have been rewritten had thousands of Black Americans been making pilgrimage to Israel since the late 1960s. And oh, by the way, I was born in 1967. The year they were going to go was the year I was born. I'm almost 60 years old. They were going to
Wow.
start something that had not yet even been started, right?
Nope.
So what happened? People may be asking. Well, of course, those letters I'm talking about, they were exchanged between January and February of that year. Of course, June of that year,
66. Oh,
66. I'm 67.
yeah.
67. Yes, sir. Yes,
67,
sir.
yeah.
67. Yes, sir.
Wow.
Of course, June of that year, Six-Day War. Israel wins. There's a lot of political fallout. And I say political fallout because of the propaganda. As I tell young people, nothing new under the sun. The way that Israel is demonized after having to engage Hamas or Hezbollah or it's the same thing. It was just getting started back then. Israel had the audacity to win the war. And the Arab League, and then later on the Soviet powers began this whole propaganda thing called, it was after the 67 war, ladies and gentlemen, that the Arab powers started calling Israel settler colonial. Now, it started already in 1948, don't get me wrong. But after they saw, especially after 67, when Egypt just knew they had them, right? I mean, Gamal Nasser, they just knew they finally had these Israelis. They're gonna pummel them. They're gonna destroy them finally. And it turned on them, and they started saying they turned it around on the Israelis. They said the Israelis started a fight. They stealing our land and yada yada yada. That's all that happened. Nothing new under the sun. Well, there's a lot of political fallout, as I said. And I write about all this in my book, Zionism in the Black Church. So this is we've known about this for a number of years now. Dr. King, short version of the story, because it's already too late now, decides that it's a little politically hot. Let's postpone the trip till next year. Of course, the next year, April the 4th, 1968, he's assassinated. So he was never able to lead that tour. Hence, my colleague, Dr. Stevens, says, when we began to talk about, now let's commemorate that. Now, not let's speak for Dr. King. Let's speak for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. None of those things. Let's speak for his family. No, that is not what the council is attempting to do. The council is saying that this was a part of Black American history. It never happened. And we as Black Christians who stand with Israel believe that that was so significant, and the timing may just might be now to then readdress something that in the midst of the rising Jew hatred all over the world, especially in the Western world, the rising Israel hatred, the disinformation, even in our country, the left side of the aisle, the right side of the aisle, we're seeing nothing that's talked about more than Israel, the Jews, the attacks on synagogues. I said, you know what? Who has had a closer and longer standing relationship with the Jewish people in the United States than Black Americans? right? Going back to Julius Rosenwald and Booker T. Washington, and going back to the civil rights movement, talk about all the different things when Jews were fleeing Nazi Europe, and the professors were coming here in the 1940s, and the other schools, colleges would not allow those professors to teach. Those professors went to HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities. We can go on and on and on. We can talk about all the different business ventures, education ventures, how this thing has a synergy like no other, right? And that's not a lauding above, let's say, the Black American community is more significant than all the other parts of the Christian community. No, 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 no. But we are talking about what's historically accurate. So we said maybe this is time, and so we launched what's called the Unfinished Business Holy Land Tour, where we are taking 500 Black American and African, we'll talk about the African part as well, African pastors and leaders, ministry leaders, influencers, everything. In about 5 weeks, Jonathan, we have we're 550. I don't know what the number is right now. I have to double check. We have more registrations than we have slots to take. We call, just so you know, and with the council, we have a group that's called the registrations, and then we have the confirmations. All of those have not yet been confirmed. That's a slower process, but the registrations continue to come. We're probably averaging about 100 a week still. So the registration process is still open, but we can talk some more about the tour. But that's how the tour came to be.
You know, we could have ended this conversation earlier when you talked about this. First of all, I love the name. I didn't know the history, but it's obvious, and the fact that it's unfinished business historically, but the fact that Prime Minister Ben Gurion, who was not a particularly religious Jew, understood in 1967 that this was historic biblically, that's a headline right there. That's a news flash of its own. But also, as you were speaking, and I'm glad because we do need to talk about Africa, all at around that same time, the
Mhm,
woman who became Israel's, I think, fourth prime minister, Golda Meir, was
mhm,
foreign minister. And
mhm,
around that same time, when Dr. King was planning this trip and then was assassinated,
mhm,
she was leading an effort throughout newly independent nations, post-colonial nations throughout the African continent for teenage Israel to be lending support to new Black African nations
yep,
across the entire continent. So this is it's
yeah,
more. I have to say it, and I don't want to say it in a way that's going to come across inappropriate, but to tie into the fact that you've got over 550 people already registered, but you've got a confirmation process, tells me also that you're seeking quality, not just quantity. That you're looking not just to say, hey, Dr. King had 5,000, was going to do 5,000, and he would have. He would
mhm,
have.
mhm,
Planes were
mhm,
smaller then; it would have taken longer,
mhm,
or more stops.
mhm,
But to just say, oh, well, let's do a 10% of that, and then let's follow up and do 5,000 the next year. We're going to talk about that too.
mhm,
I like this because
mhm,
it's important that this not be, especially this time,
mhm.
not just a trip for anyone. And there's another great biblical hook you can use. You're going to have 500 people, and if you use the biblical formula in terms of going to battle,
Mhm.
you got one takes on 100, so you're going to have 500 who the following year can bring 5,000, and tada, as they say in French.
Yes, sir. We Christians tend to use this term more frivolously than our Jewish brothers and sisters, but it's prophetic. We feel it's prophetic, not that we're prophetic or there's something important about us. We are vessels, but we believe that there's a timing that's happening here. There's a reason that's like, once again, Jonathan, your question at the press conference, why now? It kind of it alludes to the prophetic nature of what's going on, because the now is not so much about us, me, Michael Stevens, Roger Cheeks, but we believe what was it, the Moed, right? We
Yes.
believe that that's what this is now. This is an appointed time for many, many different reasons. I can make that case for over a period of time, and I've preached some of these sermons over the years. But there is a unique relationship, a prophetic relationship between Israel and Africa, and then the diaspora of both places, right? We believe, and we in the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel for years, that the unique synergy between the Black and Jewish communities in the United States is a extension of what Queen of Sheba and Solomon on that because it wasn't just a visit, but it was a solidarity mission, right? She literally
Yes.
stands in Israel in First Kings chapter 10 in the prophets says God loves Israel forever. That's why He's made you king. She says, I have a revelation. I heard about your fame. I heard about your wisdom. I heard about all these different things, but the half wasn't even told me. I see the temple. I see basically all the things, and happy are your servants. And it sounds like she just kind of lauding and applauding Solomon, but at the end of that, she goes, "Blessed be the Lord your God." She does a Baruch Hashem. She
Yes.
says, "I see all this stuff, but I recognize, Solomon, it's not really about you. All due respect, it's the God of Israel who loves Israel so much that He's made you king and has made Israel so prosperous." Right? This was an African nation, so what's happening is that from the south, this has always been the case that Israel's refuge, even it wasn't Jeremiah who said they would flee down into Egypt whenever there would be danger that would often come from the north, right? So this was always the case. Those of you who are Christians, you'll know that in Matthew chapter 12, Jesus refers to the same visit, even in the Christian text. He refers to it at that time during Jesus' time. It's 1,000 years old. That trip was 1,000 years ago, and he points to it as a prophetic
I
a
didn't know that.
foreshadowing because he said she came to see, I'm going to paraphrase Jonathan, a type of Moshiach. Of course, he's declaring himself as Moshiach. What he's saying is that she came from the ends of the earth. And the queen of the south, it's funny that sometimes I think one of the interpretations of the word Yemen is south. And some people they'll quibble with me, Jonathan. Oh, it wasn't Ethiopia, it was Yemen. Okay, but in the ancient times there was no separate Ethiopia, Somalia, it was called Cush. The Bible calls it
Yes.
Cush. Mitzrayim Cush is what we refer to now Africa. No, the word Africa is not in the Bible, but the Bible tells us that that vast region, Cush, Mitzrayim, Phut, Canaan, these are the four sons of Ham. The Bible tells us that these lands are named after their progenitors. We call it today Africa, but what it's referring to is Mitzrayim, the northern part over the equator, and Cush on the southern. You're talking about what we call about Africa. Now, from the south will come gifts being brought. David is the one who prophesied before she even came. Psalm 68 verse 31, princes shall come out of Egypt. Ethiopia shall soon stretch out her hands to God. Why does David say those two nations together? He's saying Mitzrayim, Cush. He's saying the same thing that's being said in Genesis. He's saying what the Bible calls the land of Ham. David says from the land of Ham will come the gift to Zion. And what happens right on cue during Solomon's reign? From the land of Ham, a gift is brought to Zion, 4,000 tons of gold, not to mention the rubies and the spices and everything. She brings all of these things as if, Jonathan, those are the types of gifts that are usually brought after a tribute after a war. No, she brings gifts to Zion. Why? Because David prophesied that Cush would bring gifts to Zion. And she literally comes and brings, and she Torah study, everything. The Bible says she tested Solomon with hard questions. Why? Because Solomon had gotten such wisdom from God. And where did that wisdom come from? The very Torah of Moshe. All these things are speaking to, now I'll say this, I'm not going to preach this sermon. This happens, Jonathan, 2 centuries before Isaiah would say all the nations will flow to Zion. 2 centuries before God utters that through Isaiah, here comes Africa. We don't believe that's happenstance. We don't believe as Christians that it's happenstance, that Jesus even pointed to it as a prophetic move. So when you're talking about in the United States, the Julius Rosenwald and the Booker T. Washingtons and the Dr. Kings and the Heschels, and those are the famous ones, ladies and gentlemen. There are millions of stories of Black and Jewish community leaders throughout the country finding each other, building education, building industry, coming together. Some of it is from shared experiences. They know what it is to be enslaved. They know what it is to be oppressed because of who they are. And some of it was because of a like mind, because of love for the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We believe all of these things are true. They're not happenstance. And now is a time in which the Black community has to affirm more than ever before it's standing with Israel. There's the hatred for Israel and the Jewish people that's rising. That hatred was clear even during Solomon's day. Israel was always surrounded by enemies. And what happens? The Queen of Sheba passes by all those enemies, ignores them all, and goes and stands with Israel. We believe that's what's happening now.
You're blowing me away. But this is amazing. I'm actually without words. It's so significant. Um,
I
let's
didn't mean to
talk.
go on and on and on, but that's what you're saying.
No, no, you can preach all you want because everything you say, and I should have, it's not in your bio that I read introducing you, but one of the things that's missing is the fact that you are among the most consequential pro-Israel Christian advocates that I know. And whenever your videos pop into my feed and whatever social media, you bet I click on that. And that's for the exact reason that we just experienced here. And I'm so grateful for that.
Mhm.
Um, let's but for those people who are following who say, "Oh, that all sounds really great. I need to go back and reread some of my Bible, and I want to look back on Dr. King. I didn't know that he was planning on bringing 5,000 people to Israel." And then that was sadly cut off. You were right earlier when you said, imagine what would have happened, right? Had he done that. I always think I try, not always, I don't always come up with it, but I always try to do some kind of tribute to Dr. King, or either around his birthday or the anniversary of his being assassinated. I think in our, well, not our lifetime, but in our lives in the last century, he's one of the most consequential human beings to exist. And it seems one of the most unfair, irrational things that he was cut down so
Mhm.
early, so young in his life, and that he had accomplished as much as he had. So I, again, to the name, but I think we need to, and I'm going to ask you to unpack for a few minutes,
Mhm.
why, okay, everyone refers to Dr. King, but his trip that he was planning was not simply a tourism thing that you might see someone going, this year we're going to go to the Holy Land, and next year we're going to take a cruise to Alaska, and the following year we're going to go, well, then he wouldn't have gone to Vietnam, but somewhere else, the North Pole.
Mhm.
Why is Dr. King so significant vis-a-vis Israel and the Jewish people?
Well, that part of it has to do with the religious part. We don't have a lot of quotes from Dr. King in defending Israel. We have a lot of those biblically. He doesn't always, start quoting scripture, Genesis 12:3, that type of thing. Of course, he knows those scriptures. But he's going then in his clergy role, if I'm not mistaken, and I have to look at this again, he was planning on bringing a choir. Mahalia Jackson was the most famous gospel singer at the time. She was going to be
I
coming,
know
right?
that.
So
I
why,
know that.
why, why all these religious things, right? He's a pastor. He's bringing other pastors, other leaders, and then gospel,
Come
which
on.
we'll have a group as well. We're going to have a band that's going to be playing everything. Why are these Black Americans bringing their gospel music tradition? First of all, you can't have a bunch of Black folks have church and have some music, right? Right? And all this, right? And again, and we're going to be singing and worship. Why? He recognized the religious aspect of the trip, right? That's why. Why would you have gospel singers? Why? Because he knew there's going to be pastors and leaders, and there was a great deal of excitement about it as it was building up. So the pilgrimage, which is the word that Ben Gurion used when I talk about the
Yeah.
beginning, that's not just a trip. You don't make a, I mean, if you make a pilgrimage to Kenya, it's probably because you're Kenyan, right? You make a pilgrimage to Brazil, you're Brazilian. But a Christian makes pilgrimage to Israel because that's his spiritual home. That
Correct.
Jerusalem is the center of the universe, right? Not just for our Jewish brothers and sisters, but for the world, and especially for the Christian, right? If we know our Bibles, right? If we know our Bibles, Jerusalem is the word of God says that it is his throne room, right? It's the place that he's chosen to place his name. So, and this is where Christianity's birth, right? Jesus crucified, rises again. Here comes the Holy Spirit. Boom! All this happens in Jerusalem, not happenstance. So these pilgrims knew what they were doing. They were going to how religious were they all? I have no idea, right? I mean, but what they recognized though is what Jerusalem is. So you have to know. I have this conversation often. I'm a musician as well, and I came up in church playing and studied music and everything and stuff. And I love there's a gospel tradition and everything. From the gospel tradition that came out of the Negro spirituals. As a matter of fact, much of the foundation of American music comes out of the Black tradition, right? The spirituals, the blues, all these things, right? And it fused with other music from around the world. But what is uniquely American is things like jazz, right? One artist said jazz is America's original form of classical music. Its contribution to the genre would be jazz. So, but within there has always been an infusion of what in my book I call spiritual Zionism. What's spiritual Zionism? Go down Moses, Joshua at the Battle of Jericho, swing low, sweet chariot, Elijah rock, shout, shout. Why are all these songs about these Jewish prophets, about the Holy Land, right? Swing low, sweet chariot coming forth to carry me home, ladies and gentlemen, means Jerusalem, the new Jerusalem, right? Whether in the Old or the New Testament, these songs that go back centuries, sung often on the plantations about the God who brought Israel out of bondage. Harriet Tubman was called Black Moses. All these
Yeah.
things are infused within the Black church tradition. Hence my book, Zionism in the Black Church. So you have, Jonathan, then if you're talking about bringing thousands of Black Americans or African Christians to the Holy Land, there's no mistaking, as you said, that's not just a safari somewhere. That's not just a cruise somewhere in the Atlantic, or the Alaska cruise, which is all fine. That's all. I'm not saying things are bad. Hey, do your thing, take your holidays, spend time with your family, right? I'm saying it's different. It's different because they are making pilgrimage to the land that is their spiritual birth, that is their connection. Not to mention the scriptures. I told you about Psalm 68, Zephaniah 3:10, from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, my daughters, my suppliants shall bring back. It goes on. Isaiah chapter 11, I'm going to bring them from the four corners of the earth, from Egypt, from Ethiopia, on and on and on and on. Even in the New Testament, the book of Acts, the Ethiopian Jew who travels all the way from Ethiopia to worship in Jerusalem, he then meets one of the apostles on his way back. Why does the Bible give a unique story to that particular one? In the book of Acts chapter 2, there's a general story about the Jews from Egypt and from Greece and from Rome and from Asia, from India. Literally, I talked to my Indian Jewish Israeli friends whose family traces back their heritage from when they fled Israel during the time of the Maccabees. This is 130 years before the time of Jesus, right? He talks about these things. It's amazing. So when you read in the book of Acts, they're coming from India to come to Shavuot, right? To the Feast of Tabernacles. But in Acts chapter 8, it's a unique story about the Ethiopian who's now going back after the pilgrimage feast. He meets Philip, he gets baptized, the whole thing, right? That's how the beginning of the Coptic church of the Ethiopians starts in the book of Acts. No other church's origin is outlined that way in the scriptures other than Africa's, right? So you have this unique story that's been going on for thousands of years. So when a Christian then makes pilgrimage, makes a type of aliyah, if you will, right? There's an understanding that they're going to the Holy Land. Jonathan, you live in Israel. You have pilgrims from all over the world. Those Nigerian Christians are the loudest, most boisterous, most joyful. They're singing at the Kotel. They're singing at the Sea of Galilee. Why? They're in the Holy Land. That's why that whole Jesus is Palestinian is so foreign to Black people. I'm just telling you, ladies and gentlemen, that is not those types of
Specifically to
things.
Black people, you think?
Yeah, what's that?
Specifically to Black people?
No, to anybody. Well, I'm saying specifically. Let me clean that up. Thank you for saying that. The anti-Zionist, faux pro-Palestinian, because they're not concerned about Palestinians, that began to infiltrate in the Black community, specifically in the late 1960s. But again, this time is all the same. I use the word infiltrate for a reason. KGB disinformation, Arab nationalism, Nazism, why I say Nazism? Because the Muslim Brotherhood was formed, very much connection to what was going on in Nazi Germany later on. The Grand Mufti, all these things are completely foreign to people of African. In other words, these things were coming from outside of the African diaspora. They were always coming. None of it was organic. None of it was truly from. It was coming from outside and placed inside. Why do I say that? Replacement theology. Israel is Palestine. Jesus is a Palestinian.
Right.
None of that stuff. And for people, if you understand what I'm saying, what did the Palestinians focus on? What was the PLO's primary focus, particularly Yasser Arafat, Jonathan, who becomes chairman in 1969? Isn't that amazing? Dr. King is assassinated in 68. The PLO was formed in 64, so it's already there. Right. And they're already trying to make inroads into the Black civil rights movement, and they're not having it. Dr. King, they're just not having it. They recognize, he says, a peace for the Arabs means economic security. He was never anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, none of those types of things, right? But he never confused Israel's peace and security and secure borders, right, with somehow free Palestine. None of that stuff. Even Palestine wasn't even used as a word that referred to the Palestinian Arabs during that time. That was happened much later on, right, and particularly after Dr. King's death, which is why when you read his own quotes in the Rabbinical Assembly document, ladies and gentlemen, go to rabbinical.assembly.org. Thank you, rabbis. Type in Dr. King, and we have the whole transcript of his last meeting, one of his last meetings, 10 days before he's killed.
10 days, right. 10 days before he was assassinated.
Yep. March 25th, 1968, he has some of his most extensive conversations because the rabbis are asking him questions. And not just about Israel, it's the election is coming up in the Vietnam War. I mean, it's a very tumultuous time, much like now in the United States. And they're picking his brain. They want to know, what do you feel about this? What do you think about that? And one of the things that comes up is anti-Zionism within the younger portion of Dr. King, what they call themselves the militant civil rights movement, the Angela Davis, The Stokely Carmichaels, Kwame Ture, the Eldridge Cleavers, the Black Panther. The rabbis are saying to Dr. King, you have to understand this, ladies and gentlemen, they're not asking him about what anti-Semitism is. They're rabbis. They know what anti-Semitism is. They're asking him very pointedly, what do you say about what's coming out of some of the black community? Why? They had never heard it before. They've seen Jew hatred for thousands of years. They never saw it coming out of the black community. So when they asked Dr. King, help us wrap our, they didn't say it this way, I'm saying, help us wrap our brains around this. I encourage people to read it. It's only 13 pages. Take a couple of seconds, read the whole document, right? Because it's a fascinating conversation that they have 10 days before he's killed.
Find the link in the notes here so people can watch it.
I quote it several. Thank you, John. I quote it several times in my book. I've quoted several times in my lectures and everything. Again, like I said, not to speak for Dr. King, not to speak for Joshua Heschel. No, just to say, here's what they said. Here's literally what they said. Here's the context in which they said it. Right. So again, and I'll land my plane here. If you notice, ladies and gentlemen, when Jonathan and I said March 25th, 1968, that's almost a full year after the 6-Day War. So for the liars who say that Dr. King turned on Israel after the 6-Day War, why is his most full-throated support for Israel coming almost a year after that war?
Good point.
Why? He never fell for it. He said, yeah, he postponed the trip, right? But Dr. King never, not just Dr. King, right? Got to be really, really clear. The NAACP, the other leaders in the black community, after he's killed, Bayard Rustin, one of his main colleagues starts BASIC, Black Americans to Support Israel Committee, right? So long after Dr. King, this is 1975. Years after Dr. King is gone, the black civil rights community continues to stand flat-footed. And once again, talk about prophetic, Dr. King warned, we must stand with Israel. Bayard Rustin warned the United Nations and the international community that as long as they ignored the terrorism against Israelis, we would have what we call now global terrorism. Was he right? My God. He's talking about prophetic, right? He said, there was no such thing as global terrorism in the 1970s. It was the Palestinians doing that to the Israelis. The Munich Games, how they slaughtered the Israeli wrestling team, right? The suicide bombers, all these things were happening uniquely from the Arab Palestinians to the Israelis. And it was the black leaders who warned the world that if we don't stand up and defend what's going on against Israel, we'll all be dealing with it. That's called a prophet, ladies and gentlemen. Every nation around the world, Muslim, Christian, whoever, are dealing with the issue of global terrorism. Where did it start? The Arabs against the Jews. That's what the black community warned against. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I know you're just blowing me away. I hope everyone who's following this has, especially in the video, is feeling kind of at least half of the heart palpitations that I am, because it's so significant. I was going to ask you perhaps an inappropriate or maybe a softball question, what's more significant, or what would have been more significant for Dr. King then to bring 5,000 people, or for you and Dr. Stevens and the rest of the council to be bringing 500 to see to do that now? And because I thought, oh, okay. Yeah, 5,000, that's a nice number. Pilgrimage, restoring pilgrimage that we haven't seen since the first century. And certainly now we're in a place of ridiculous division and slander. But what you just pinpointed was, had that 5,000 person delegation, solidarity mission, pilgrimage happened, for sure it would have cut off a lot of that pro-Palestine, quote unquote, movement at its feet, right? At the very roots, because you would have had 5,000 or many of 5,000 voices like that of Dr. King having influence all over North America.
Jonathan, just consider for a moment the home videos and the pictures we would have of a sea of black folk, right? Just the pictures alone, right? See, when we see pictures like that of Dr. King standing with Joshua Heschel, or when we see things like, and we've talked as a musician, Louis Armstrong performing in Tel Aviv, right? Those are, oh, that's amazing. Josephine Baker, Nina Simone. So you have a Dizzy Gillespie, he performed there. So those are fascinating pictures. Thousands of just ordinary black Americans as well in Galilee, in Jerusalem. The pictures alone would have just sent shockwaves. For all of the anti-Israel sentiment, it would have been, that alone would have probably inspired other black folk to go. I mean, Ebony magazine probably would have done a spread if I got my dates right. I think Ebony started in the 1940s. I mean, you seriously just picture the archives that we would have right now of just pictures and video. No political statements, nothing like that. Just black folks by the hundreds being baptized in the Sea of Galilee and the Jordan, right? Just pastors preaching in Jerusalem. Right? What we associate now with mass pilgrimages from other ethnic groups, stuff like that, that would have been codified by the black community. It would have been a black thing to just travel. And again, why do I connect all those Negro spirituals things? Because we're always singing about, we're marching to Zion. Beautiful, beautiful. The black folks have been singing about Zion for thousands of years. Not that other people haven't. I talk about it in my book. Many of the black churches' names, Ebenezer Baptist Church, Mount Moriah Baptist Church, right? You
Zion, something, yeah.
Jerusalem Church of God in Christ. Always, always, always this emphasis of there is no. And again, ladies and gentlemen, for those who might they'll get your panties in a bunch. I'm not talking about a political statement now. Now I'm just talking about an identification with the Bible. Jonathan, you and I both know one of the best remedies for things like replacement theology, all kind of stuff, is just knowing the Bible. Just the Bible. I mean, before you even go to some sort of seminar, just read the Bible. Those of us who don't read Hebrew, if you just read it in a decent translation, right? It's a translation, it's not the perfect, but if you just read, I gotta tell this quick story. I told this before on another thing, and we shared it with, there was a young lady who was part of this group. It's in Israel. She was an Iranian, and she became a Christian, right? She gave her heart to Jesus,
That's my friend, Marzi.
Oh, you know that? I don't know her. So is that who that is? A young lady? She's like in her
Yes.
30s or something like that. I saw her.
She's
You
not
know?
in her 30s anymore, but she and I are partners in bringing Christians a week before you come here. In fact, I wanted to ask you to tell people to come in advance. She and I have a
Yes.
program to bring Christians to harvest olives here in Israel
Ah.
called Root and Branch. Yeah, we're good
Everything that you.
friends.
So those ladies and gentlemen, go to the website about our tour, BCLCIR, and I'm just making this quick commercial thing, Jonathan. And then my wife is one of the ones who's over all the itinerary type of stuff and everything. I mean, we're all doing it together, but she's kind of doing that. So Jonathan, you shoot me a note. I'll make sure I connect you with them because there's going to be things that we're going to be doing in the land. Of course, there's 500 of us, so we're going to break up into groups and kind of do different things. So yeah. So when her testimony, if it's the same lady I'm talking about, Jonathan, a couple months ago, it was posted on the video, and her testimony was that even after having become a Christian, it's a new Christian. She wanted to know more about her faith, started reading the Bible. But remember, she's very pro-Palestine. She organized anti-Israel stuff on the college campuses. If it's the same, because she talks about it in her.
No, not the same. Because
Okay, that's
Marzi
it.
was never pro-Palestine. She
Yes,
always,
sir.
as soon as she became a Christian in 1999, she
Yes,
just had
sir.
a heart for Israel and the Jewish people, and
Yes.
her dream was always to come here. So,
Yes.
so different woman, but okay, we
Different
still have a
person.
great program together.
I'll send you the link. Absolutely. Yeah. Let me know about the program and everything. Short version of the story that I was telling was that yes, she recognized that though she got saved, she became a Christian. She started reading the Bible, and as soon as she saw the word Israel, she closed the Bible because the hatred for Israel was still there. Remember, she became a Christian,
Yeah.
but the hatred for Israel was still there. And she
Yes.
had the wherewithal to pray to God. She says, okay, God, I need you to help me, basically. Take this out of my heart. He did an instantaneous work in her heart. She opened the Bible back up, and then with that hatred kind of dissipated, she said, then the words came alive. And that's my warning to Christians. As long as she harbored hatred for Israel, she couldn't even really understand the words. But when she asked God to touch her heart, boom, now I'm starting to get it. What's the best remedy for replacement theology? A heart reading the Bible. Just
Yeah.
read the Bible. And when you see Israel, just know he's talking about Israel. Go ahead, Jonathan. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just, I don't know. Are you allowing Israeli Jews to tag along? Because I want to be there for every moment to be part of this historic experience.
So,
But as a pilgrimage, you know this because you've done
mhm,
it too. You bring a
mhm,
lot of other Christians,
mhm.
not just Black Christians. You're part of that.
Yes.
To come to
Yes.
Israel, and it's eye-opening to be with people when they come here for the
Yes.
first time. So you're going to have that on steroids
Yes,
in
sir.
November,
Yes,
but
sir. Yes, sir.
this is going to be on steroids on steroids. It's just
Of our 500 participants, there will be some who are not African or African American. There'll be a small number of other ones who have such deep connections within the Black and African Christian
good.
communities that it was necessary for them to come. So we
Good,
were never trying to be
good.
discriminatory anyway, but we were talking about a black legacy thing, which we were an African legacy thing. So there will be other people, Hispanic, white, who are going to actually be a part of
Very
that,
good.
who will be a part of other groups that they're coming with as well. And Jonathan, we will be doing this with 50 rabbis. We're organizing the 50 rabbis who will be a part of this tour. We're already working with our rabbi friends. Shout out to a couple of them that right now, so I say their names because there's some of the. Let me mind you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going back to rabbi. Remind me, Jonathan. I'm going back to rabbi thing. When we talk about the 550 something plus that registered, there's been no formal announcement. There's been no formal press. Jonathan, yours is the third podcast I've done within the last week. Just the last week, Tinashe Peter, my good friend, we did one together. The Jonathan Daniel of Stand Tall Israel, we did one a few days ago. And then now yours, Jonathan. I'm honored to do yours. There's been nothing. Now, my good friend Eric Steckelbeck, shout out to him. We'll be in Dallas with him on his show. The council will be there the 1st of September. And as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, the registrations are already. So in other words, there's been no real megaphone. There's been no radio spots. None of any of those things that are going to happen long after we've already blown past that. And why am I saying? Because this is a movement. We believe this is a movement. This is something this has been how they know about Pastor Dumisani. Word of mouth. We put up our website. We email some people who email some people and different ones and different pastor friends that we have. They're recommending people and people are getting frustrated. I haven't been confirmed yet. Where's my email? because it's happening. They're getting other people. It's multi-generational. Young folks in their 20s, pastor emeritus in their 80s and 90s. I mean, it's men, pastors, women, leaders. Some of them, Jonathan, I have to tell you some of the testimonies we've even heard because we have them write 100 to 250 words about why you want to go. I gotta touch on that in a second. But anyway, back to the rabbis thing.
Yes.
So my good friend Rabbi, shout out to Rabbi Mark Bloom of Temple Beth Abraham in Oakland. Love you, sir. Okay. Shout out to Rabbi Nolan Leibowitz of Valley Beth Shalom. They are two of the rabbis that are already kind of anchoring this. And so Rabbi Josh Stanton of the Jewish Federation, Rabbi Yaakov, from Jewish Coalition of Jewish Values, Minkin. Right, because we want to make sure, Jonathan, that we got a sample. Orthodox, hopefully Chabad, conservative, young ladies and gentlemen, religious. He knows what I mean. They're not conservative in terms of Republican, Democrat. We don't care. Denominational, because we want the spectrum of the Jewish community in terms of its clergy, because we want those black pastors and leaders to meet different rabbis from different swaths. Rabbi Pesach Walicki, I've already given him a shout out, everything that he's going to be helping us do a couple of things. So again, we're going to be organizing 50 rabbis who will be joining us for the tour as well. There'll be times when they do something separate, like, we're not gonna, we have a little bit of experience of everything. We're going to be doing baptism. We're going to drag our rabbis to the Jordan River and have them baptized. When we're doing other things like that, the rabbis will be doing other things, but we're coming together for those things that are the Jewish Christian synergistic type of, absolutely. So, because for us, it's important. It's not a one-off, ladies and gentlemen. The rabbis will be chosen specifically, strategically from the cities that they're coming from across the country, as well as possibly those who will be coming from Africa if they're stationed in places like Nairobi, but mainly the United States, the mainland for that part. Why? So that those relationships can continue on in Oakland, can continue on in Louisiana, can continue on, right? That's what, because this is, again, we believe this is a moment in time. So like you said, Jonathan, it's way beyond just a trip. It's going to be that. It was amazing. It's going to be food. It's going to be singing. It's going to be tears. It's going to be all of that. But it's also a biblical standing on the word of God, right? Praying for the peace of Jerusalem. No hatred for Arab Palestinians. None of that kind of stuff. We want peace the same way those civil rights leaders wanted peace, right? But at the same time, we're not wavering on our commitment as Christians to indeed pray for the peace of Jerusalem, to indeed seek the comfort of Jerusalem. That's a large part of what we're actually going to be doing while we're there.
Amazing. Talk about Africa now. You've been saying that people are coming. Obviously, that's significant going back to the Queen of Sheba. But how and who's coming from Africa?
There are pastors and leaders coming from across Africa. Come from Kenya, from Ghana, from South Africa, from Ethiopia. I'll come back to Ethiopia. There's from probably about 12, 13 different African states that are going to be there. The lion's share of the leaders are coming from the United States, but there is a contingent that's coming from Africa. There's many stories I could tell about that, but let me tell you just one quick one. There's a delegation of 20 Ethiopian evangelical pastors and leaders coming that are part of this tour. and they are coming. My dear friend, Dr. Abera Hapte, he is the owner of El Shaddai Television Ministries there, one of the evangelical leaders there. He's connected to all the business leaders, the church leaders, and not just in Ethiopia, different parts of Africa. And God placed on his heart, we take no credit for any of this, several years ago, to organize the evangelical community, to go to Israel at some point, to do two things: connect with the Ethiopian-Israeli community and apologize for how they were treated in Ethiopia, and thank them for the contributions that they made to Ethiopia.
Wow.
So he and I talked about it a little while ago. That's going to happen. We'll be in Israel, God say the same, during the Sigid celebration, the Ethiopian Jewish celebration there
Oh, yes.
in Jerusalem. And we are planning a ceremony of all 500 of us,
Whoa.
strategic leaders from the Ethiopian Israeli community. This is already being talked about between the embassies. I mean, Avraham Nagus is the Israeli ambassador to Ethiopia. He and Tomer, shout out to Tomer, my friend. This is already being organized. I believe they've already begun talking with the president's office in Israel. This is already being organized by hot off the press, ladies and gentlemen. Again, none of this has been published in that sense, right? We're going to have a ceremony, probably at the Knesset, in which that apology is official in front of the world, including the press that will be there. Again, saying, and Dr. Habte, my friend, and Pastor Dumisani, we want Ethiopia blessed. And we know that we cannot be blessed if we don't if we don't bless the children of Israel. He said, here's the thing. The Ethiopian Jews were here for thousands of years, and they made huge contributions to our society. Same thing that Nelson Mandela said about the Jewish community in South Africa. Thank you for the contributions that you made. We talked about the amazing Adwa battle in which the Italians in the late 1800s invaded Ethiopia and were repelled by the Ethiopians. He said, Pastor Musani, it was the Ethiopian Jews who played such a crucial role as part of the Ethiopian community there in defeating the Italian. He said all these different contributions. He said, we want to say we apologize for how you were treated, and we want to thank you. That's going to happen there during this tour. That's just one aspect of the African delegations that will be coming with us.
I experienced when I was in Congo in 23, unfortunately, my only time in Africa, but what you just related to in Ethiopia, where people not only said we want to be blessed and therefore we want to be blessing Israel, but they understand that Congo after 1973, when all of the Arab states started and the Soviets started strong arming all of Africa to break
Mhm,
ties with Israel, and Congo did it, that they went downhill and became sadly this impoverished country with so much potential. And I can't literally cannot tell you how many times when I was there for, I don't know, 10 days, that
mhm.
people were apologetic and understood that the remedy for their problem was the cure of blessing Israel because they had turned on Israel.
Yes, that you'll hear that sentiment a lot throughout the African Christian community from Uganda. When what happened with Idi Amin, there were pastors who came together when Idi Amin helped the hostages, helped the terrorists take the Israeli hostages there
Correct.
back in 1976, ladies and gentlemen. I've heard from Ugandans for years, Pastor Musani, the pastors and the leaders came together and had a time of fasting and prayer and repentance to God. Even though they did not do it themselves, their president did. And they knew that those things, I've heard that throughout. And so that continues to be the case. Israel's strongest support comes from the Christian community and the largest Christian communities in Africa. As a matter of fact, according to Pew or Gallup, by 2050, Israel will have Africa will have the largest Christian community in the world. It's already, first of all, have the largest population. It's going to be about 1.2 billion. Am I saying that right? That's the population that's going to be, or is it 2.1 billion? I'm saying it wrong. I'm getting my numbers. They're going to have Africa will be the largest continent, but has the largest Christian and the largest Muslim population. So the Israel's greatest support outside of the Jewish people has always come from Christian Israel supporters,
Yes.
and the most fervent Christian Israel supporters on the planet are African. Again, no slight to our Hispanic brothers and sisters. Asian. No, I'm
No.
not that. This is not a competition, ladies and gentlemen. I'm talking about what I'm saying now. This is actually measured by Gallup. They said some of the most committed Christians because of the genocide that Christians face. It's the ground zero is Africa. Oh, they're being killed in Syria. They're being killed at times in Lebanon. They're being killed in Iran. No, 100%. The persecution of Christians. Christianity is the number one persecuted religion. Jews are the number one persecuted
Yeah,
people. Of course,
correct.
Judaism is a religion, but again, people when they argue about that, well, there's not as many Jews. But the fact of the matter, there's billions of
Right,
Christians, right? And
correct.
because of many parts of the world, they don't have religious freedom. Places like Nigeria, where Christians are dying 6,000 a year and more, right? This is happening in those same areas. There's a love for Israel and the Jewish people. Jonathan,
Yeah,
you know, the Christian church is growing fastest in Iran. Those are some of those Zionist Christians on the planet. They love Israel. They pray for the peace of Jerusalem, the whole thing, right? The Ayatollahs were not able to distinguish that fire of love for God, love for the word of God, and love for Israel. So this is just the reality. What's happened in the West, ladies and gentlemen, is fairly unique in the West in that we are Christians, but we are beginning to drown in the sea of anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, and the other parts of the world are looking at us, our Christian brothers and sisters in places like Iran and Nigeria, going, "What is wrong with you guys? What's happening with you all? America, you are the leading Christian nation. You're the one sending missionaries. Now we need to send missionaries to you. What is going on? What's happening there in this bastion of freedom, the freest nation in the world? How do we have Christians coming against Israel?" It's not the majority. Christians still make up the main support for Israel in the United States. But ladies and gentlemen, what we see happening is a bad sign when we looking at these measurements that the younger Christians are not
yeah,
coming up with that same love for Israel. That has a lot to do with Qatar, disinformation, Muslim Brotherhood, all these the college campuses. Don't get me started on that. We are at a very crucial moment here in the West when it comes to Israel, when it comes to our Bible.
yes, we are. I'm glad you mentioned that in terms of the future. You have a lot of Jewish friends, and I'm gonna be a little bit bold and say that I'm probably one of, maybe the only one, but certainly one of maximum a handful who will say that that trend among young Christians in America is, of course, bad for Israel and the Jewish people, but it's also bad for the church. And that's and that I care about because we have to have this dynamic of build what we do hit Genesis 1, 2, 3, building bridges, always finding commonality, always solidarity and mutual support. We took the name Genesis 1, 2, 3 of the Genesis 1, 2, 3 of the Genesis 1, 2, 3 Foundation from Genesis 12:3, which concludes with the verse that's a mandate to us to be a blessing to the families of the world. And so we can't have that without you, and you can't, and we can't be blessed without you. So that's very significant, and I know that even if I speak to Jewish friends about how important it is. I don't know if you know this, by the way. Speaking of Africa, one of the things that I'm so proud of, it was just instinctive. After October 7th, two of the 251 hostages who were killed on that day and then taken hostage were African agricultural students from Tanzania. Immediately, as soon as they found the body of one, I dispatched some money to a pastor in Tanzania, and we were immediate comfort and blessing to the family of one. And as soon as only in the last wave of when the final hostages were released from being kidnapped in Gaza, did we get to send funds over for the second family as
Yes.
well. So
It's,
that's
yes.
critical. It's just
It's,
critical.
no, it's amazing, and thank you all for that, Jonathan. I'm not surprised. We spend a lot of our time talking about those types of synergies, that type of relationship where Israel Africa concerned, and yeah, we spoke a lot, especially about Joshua Malal, whose murder was captured by Hamas and
Yeah,
posted as they celebrated. We've written about that, and I'll just say real quickly that was talked about a great deal within the black community. Those who had no dog in the fight, as far as they were concerned, even with the whole Israeli-Palestinian conflict, but they saw how those Arab Palestinians, what they did to that black
yeah,
African young man, who
yeah,
you have it's post October 7th world has been a very, very interesting one. In that, for example, one of the things that's talked about more and more in the black community is how black people are treated in that part of the world and not by Israel. That's actually
correct,
happening in real time. Yes,
correct,
sir.
correct.
Yes, sir.
Dumisani, we could go on, and just
Yes.
as a moment of personal pride and enjoyment and loving to have every opportunity to talk with you, I would do that. But I do want to wrap it up, and I want to leave you with kind of the last word. We've spoken about Dr. King. We've spoken about why it's called unfinished business. We've spoken about the significance then what would have been and what's going to be the significance now, which we couldn't. We can only imagine what it would have been, and I think that we're also in the same tip of the iceberg with what you and Dr. Stevens are doing, and we're talking about Africa and restoring relations and Queen of Sheba. What do you? Obviously, I want to use this program to promote the council and the unfinished business program. What do you need to tell people that we haven't covered that should be put out there before we say goodbye?
Of the many things I can say, Jonathan, let me say to all our Jewish and Christian brothers and sisters, we need two things. We need your prayers. When you go to the synagogue, daven for us, say our names, right? We have the on the council website, bclcir.org. You click on about the council, you have all six of us there.
Yep.
Say our names, pray for us. There's a lot that's going on. We recognize this is a moment, and then we need support as well, right? There've been a good goodwill. We are a nonprofit, so you can go on the website again, boom, and pray about your church, your shul, whatever, however you feel to do that. We definitely need support. Those are the things I could say many things, but we need the prayer support, monetary support if they can, if they feel so inclined to do. And we're saying this throughout the different communities. We're doing the African communities, African American, everything. Talk to your pastor, talk to your church, talk to your bishop, and all those things. And I'll say that in this context. Again, we believe this is a moment in time. We believe this is something that God Himself is doing. We're just trying to kind of wrap our brains around it. It's not about us. And I can't say that enough. The timing isn't because we're here on the scene. We believe that it's just the timing, and we happen to be that this is our Hineni moment. Like I said before, to our Jewish brothers and sisters, this is really us being Isaiah saying, well, you must be talking to me because I don't see anybody else in here. So sure, right. Who will go for us? Well, me, right? I'll go. We believe that this is very important for all those different reasons. Where our nation is concerned, right? We see the creeping of disinformation and Sharia compliance. I mean, Jonathan, we could talk about all these types of things. These are very, very challenging times here. So we recognize that during those times, God is always doing what He's doing. He's not concerned or worried. He doesn't sit in heaven and sit on His throne worried about what's going on, but He does move strategically, and we know He moves through people, right? He raises up men and women to do what they're supposed to do. So pray for us, support us in that, share it. Well, if nothing else, share the website, share the video, right? We've asked pastors to think about it, rabbis as well. They can't do it on Shabbat. The video of Dr. Stevens kind of walking through the whole land talking about, share it with other people.
It's a great
Just
video.
getting the word out. Yeah, they did an amazing job. I can't remember the Israeli team that did it, and we did the script thing, stuff like that. It came together. We're going to do another. The plan was to do another one, Jonathan. We just haven't been able to get to the whole, and just yet, so many things have been going on. My wife we will probably be there, Jonathan, within the next couple of weeks to do some pre stuff for that. We won't get into it now, but we are also, our ministry, we're taking about another 100 people in December for a Hanukkah music tour. The music part of my life. That'll be
That's
the
what I
next
spoke
thing we
about with
have.
Joshua. Yeah, last time
Yes.
he was here.
And then I'll be again there in February with African leader, young people from. So yeah, we're going to be in Israel several times over these next several months with different things. So people can be praying for us, sharing that information. That would be a tremendous help to us, and we'd be very, very grateful for it.
Well, we're going to get the word out, and it's really my privilege to be able to do so. I feel like I need to say, Pastor Dumisani Washington. Okay, you are, and the title and the leadership role is significant, but your heart is significant. Your vision, you as the leader that you are, and I'm just so grateful. I'm grateful to you. I'm privileged that we're friends, and I just get to be one of the Jews who's grabbing onto the corner of your garment, so to speak.
Well, Jonathan,
What a
again, we
privilege.
appreciate you all. Let me say again for people who don't know already, I'll just really this quick shout out again. Our family is so indebted and so grateful to you, David McCrutman, Emily Winkler, and
Winkler.
others for after Olga's passing, my daughter-in-law, arranging all that you did, even a fund drive for Joshua and his family, the burial of her body there in Tel Regev Cemetery. And then you all facilitated all those things, helping us put all those things together. And we will never forget that. We were already friends, we were already colleagues then, but we just really appreciate it. So I know you're not asking for that. Just know that the feeling is mutual. We appreciate our Israeli brothers and sisters. We appreciate our Israeli friends. We appreciate people like you, Jonathan, whose love and everything is demonstrated. It's not just actually said. So for us, it's personal. Yes, I'm a pastor in the Bible, those type of things, but there's a personal thing that's there as well. So we appreciate it. We really do.
Yeah, now you made me emotional because also Olga was one of those people in our lifetime who it doesn't make sense why God took her so early.
We could,
And
if she
and
were here now with 500 people coming from, yeah, we get the same way. We if she were
uh,
doing this, yeah,
but
yes, sir.
every day in the last year and a half since she died, she she,
Mm,
she would have been a power for
mm,
good. It's just, and for those who don't know, I mean, that's why I'm so sad.
mm,
Olga was also a good friend, but Dumisani's daughter-in-law, and yeah, just a few weeks. Oh, we were together. We were together. You and I were on that panel doing a book. Should promote the book
yeah,
quickly. Our book Israel the Miracle,
mhm,
in which your son Joshua and Olga have an essay, one of the 75 essays by Christian leaders from all over the world. And because she was born in South Africa and he's a Black American, they were able to weave together in about, I don't know, 1,000 words,
mm,
traditions from South Africa with the words of Nelson Mandela in support of Israel and Dr. King and their
mhm.
own perspectives. So yeah, when she died, and it's still remarkable that she was afforded the privilege of being buried here in Israel.
Yes, sir.
She's
Yes, sir.
always a
Yes, sir.
her memory is a blessing to us, and even still past her days on earth, her voice is still
Yes, sir.
such a guide
Absolutely.
for us.
100%. Absolutely. Absolutely, Jonathan.
All
So,
right. Well,
yes, sir. So we do this in her honor
Dumasani,
as
my
well.
friend.
So, yes,
Dumasani,
sir.
my friend, and I'm looking forward to getting this out just as soon as possible. Filling up your 500 and being here when you're here and tagging along wherever I can tag along and just putting it. You don't need it, but putting a wind in your sail because this is so consequential, and I'm grateful for God giving this to you and Dr. Stevens and the rest of the council now to who knows, maybe going back to the beginning, why now was my question to you in Washington. Who knows why now? But now it is happening, and therefore needs to be built up.
Absolutely.
thank you for taking the time, and thank
Yes,
you
sir.
for joining this conversation today. We always also have to, Dumasani mentioned financial support. We always have to mention our sponsors, two dear friends, Priscilla Flory, who's known here in my home as our bonus mother, a Christian woman who supported Genesis 123 Foundation from its inception, and also to the Coin family for their meaningful sponsorship of Inspiration from Zion. This, like all of the Genesis 123 Foundation programs, are made possible by donations, so please consider joining to help us and continue the dialogue and build bridges. If you'd like to sponsor a future episode in honor or memory of a loved one or special occasion, please be in touch at inspirationfromzion@gmail.com. And we'd always love to hear your comments, as I said at the outset. We want this to be a dialogue, and we invite you to send any questions as well, especially questions you have about traditional Judaism for our Ask the Rabbi programs. Please share this with others who will also find it of interest, and continue to join us right here as we bring you more meaningful conversations about unique topics relating to Israel that you won't hear anywhere else. Wherever you are in the world, I pray that you and your loved ones are all safe and healthy, and I send my blessings from right here in the Judean mountains. God bless you.